Hello, everybody. My name is Giuseppe, and I'm the founder of Perfit. I have amazing guests with us today. Her name is Summer, and Summer is a fashion content creator who focuses on styling ideas, outfit inspiration, and encouraging women to take pride in what they wear. She has been in the fashion industry for around 4 years, and now is doing this as a full-time passion, and we are so looking forward to having her on this podcast. Welcome, Summer.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, Summer, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. So let's just jump right in. So what was the journey that got you to where you are today?
So my journey, like anyone's, has been all over the shop, like roller coaster, but it's brought me to where I am today. So I'm grateful for it. I've always been a creative person from day one. I've always been into art and photography and fashion as well, like as I became a teenager. And then I never knew it was something that I'd end up doing as a full-time job, but looking back, I'm so glad it has. It's combined all of my skills and passions together, and it's amazing. So I was at college doing photography and art and things like that, and I then went and did a photography diploma, and I was kind of in the decision of whether to go to uni or not, and that was a bit of a long-winded decision. It was very much like, one day I was like, yes, I'm 100% going. The next day I was like, nope, I'm not going. So it was a very much roller coaster deciding whether I wanted to go to uni or not. Because I felt like,
what was the determining factor? Like what made it so hard for you to decide whether you were going to go to uni or not?
Honestly, the pressures from other people was the main thing. I think deep down I knew it wasn't right for me in my career path, and I think university is amazing for specific career paths. It really depends on what you want to do, but I knew that at the end of the day I'm a creative person, and that's what I wanted to delve into. And I knew deep down it wasn't right for me. I think I always knew that, but I was so swayed by other people's opinions, the pressures that schools and colleges and people put on you. It's almost like, I remember in my photography diploma class, literally out of probably 20 students, there was 3 of us that were not going. And that made me feel like it was wrong to not want to go. And I really had to stick to my gut, which I found hard to make that decision. So yeah, it wasn't an easy one.
No, for sure. After you decided to do that, what was the career path, and where did that take you?
So I'd half made the decision when I started a job at a photography studio. So I worked there for 2.5 years up until lockdown, really. And as I started the job, I kind of realized at this point, my Instagram and that was in the future. I was doing it as a hobby at that point, but it was nothing more than a hobby. It was just a side thing. But yeah, so I started this job, and it kind of made the decision for me. I was like, do you know what? I'm already got my hands on a creative job, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm getting experience. So that was the beginnings of, well, that was the decider for me in terms of university, really.
Okay.
Properly. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And then you were jumping into your Instagram and what that's going to be like. But before you jumped in and went full-fledged into Instagram, what did you do before you became a fashion influencer?
So I was at this job, like I said, 2.5 years, and I kind of ended up deciding that I knew I wanted to do something for myself. I knew I wanted to, I'm a bit of a go-getter, what's next for me? What's the next step? What more can I do? So around my job, I started a graphic design business at the end of 2019, I believe. So I started this design business, and it was very much a whole new chapter for me because I'd never run a business. I'd never done graphic design before. I just thought, do you know what? That sounds fun. And I went for it. But prior to that, I knew I wanted to start some form of business, but I experimented a little bit with ideas of what I could do and landed on deciding to do graphic design. So yeah, I did that for a little bit and then moved on to the Instagram world.
And how was that transition, and how did you get into the Instagram world, and what made you be like, okay, this is the path that I'm going to take for my future?
Yeah, so it was, I would say it wasn't really an overnight decision, but I think deep down, but at the time it was kind of like a revelation. So I was doing my design business and through lockdown, left my photography job, was doing this full time, working at home, doing my design. I did that in total for about a year, I think. Okay. Yeah, it must have been a year because it was 2021 January, you know, when everyone's doing their New Year's goals and like all their setting out their plans for the new year. And I had this moment of like realization that I really wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And it really took a lot of courage to admit it to myself, because I'd felt like I'd started this business and I'd succeeded in the fact I had clients and I was doing it full time, and I had the, you know, I was living at home, so I had that as like a fallback, but I felt like I'd succeeded in something and it was on the way to, you know, I'm working for myself, and other people will be like, that's amazing, you're doing great. And I was like, I knew it for months that it wasn't right, but I just really, really didn't want to admit it to myself, because I was like, that's a big failure. And I don't think I could admit to that failure to myself. It was just too much of a, oh God, what's next then? What am I going to do if I'm not doing this? I've taken this leap of faith and now it's not right. How am I going to go forwards? But yeah, so then I decided, I had a long chat with my partner, and he's very supportive and he's very good with those kind of chats. He knows me like the back of his hand as well. And he's like, you need to do the Instagram because that's what you love. And I was like, yeah, if I'm being truthfully honest to myself, I knew that's what I love doing. And I loved all aspects of it. And
yeah, I was just going to ask, like, what, if we go back a little bit, how did you know that the design wasn't for you? There was something inside of you that was telling you that it wasn't for you, but you're making money, you had clients, you were busy, and yet internally it wasn't actually adding up for you. So how did like, what was actually going on inside of you that was telling you, you know what, this isn't right?
Yeah, I think it was a slow burner. I know it was a short time, only a year, but it slowly was becoming, I don't want to say it, but a chore. You know, every day I was dreading getting up and getting started working. And I was like, this is not right. I've chosen to do this. I'm working for myself. I'm my own boss here, so I should be enjoying that. But I wasn't. I would dread getting out of bed in the morning. It was harder to get up. And I felt so much pressure and stress 24/7. And I became a different person in a way. I knew I wasn't right, because I'd speak to my friends and family and be like, have you noticed a difference in me? And they're like, yeah, is everything okay? I'm like, I don't know. And I think it was a hard time as well, obviously being locked down, it was a bit of a weird time
Yeah.
as it was. And I was super, super grateful for it in the beginning. And it was towards the end that I was like, this is not right. But I'm still glad, very, very glad and very grateful for what I learned and did in that time, because it's taught me so much now. And
That's
going forwards,
amazing.
then moving on to my Instagram job,
Yeah.
it really helped that transition. Yeah.
So while you were doing some design, how was the transition into and doing Instagram? How was that? How did they intertwine? And then when were you able to finally take that jump and leap and be like, okay, I'm going to do fashion and fashion styling and fashion ideas on Instagram? And how did that all evolve for you?
Yeah, it was this realization that I had in January 2021 that really helped me change my mindset, really. It was all pretty much just a change of mindset that I needed to take, because instead of thinking it at Instagram as a hobby and just something I do on the side, I was like, I'm going to make this a business. I'm going to try and change my attitude, like feel more positive and think of this as a business and not just something that's a hobby. And it was only actually 6 months later that I actually went full time in it. I think, which was quite a quick turnaround.
Yeah, that's really, really quick. How were you
Yeah,
able
and
to make that and actually
well,
monetize it?
so the thing is, before 2021, I hadn't actually earned a penny. I think I earned £50 prior to 2021. So I'd earned nothing from it, which is crazy because it was January I made my first paid deal, which was crazy because it was like, what's the difference between December and January was my mindset. That was it. It was,
That's
yeah.
incredible. That's, you know what, that's exactly what it always comes down to, is that change of mindset. That's
Yeah.
saying this is a hobby to this is a business. Now
Yeah.
I need to transform what that looks like for me. So when you were transforming that and when you were making that shift within your mind, how were you able to land your first deal, and how excited were you?
Yeah. I was so buzzing. I was like, how is this possible? How I was like, I should have been doing this whole time. But
Yeah.
I'm glad the process happened the way it did. I think everything happens for a reason. So it helped me see myself differently, see my business differently, and actually take it seriously. And I think, like I said, it was a matter of mindset change. And when I got that first deal, I was like, oh my God, it's that simple. You just have to ask. Like, it's not that simple, but to a point, it is, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And I think prior to that, I thought, oh, it's fine. When I hit this amount of followers, brands are just going to come to me and go, here you go.
Yeah.
Here's a paid deal. But then I realized that's not the case. You have to pitch yourself. You have to think of it as a business. You have to value yourself and what you do and what you can provide for these brands, because at the end of the day, it's a form of a service. They're getting a whole package, a model, a photographer, a makeup artist, all of these things are tied into one person and they're getting a lot for it. And I think people undervalue themselves when it comes to working with brands, to be honest. And I did for a long time.
And now a word from our sponsors.
The most impactful leaders at some point doubt their own potential. You're no different. You're meant for greatness. So what do these thought leaders do differently? Mentorship. We all need help from someone who has gone before us and is able to believe in us when we don't, who refuse to have us play small. They challenge our excuses and inspire us to choose courage over cowardice, faith over fear, and trust over doubt. Decide on you. Decide on mentorship. Decide on impact leadership. Visit www.alphaandomegastrategies.com.
Please make sure to check out alphaandomegastrategies.com for all things growth and leadership. And at checkout, enter Perfit 10. That is PERFIT 10 for an extra 10% off. Wow, that is you nailed it right there. People undervalue themselves when it comes to anything. When they are representing other businesses, other brands, whatever, the value goes up. But when they start to represent themselves, and this is me, 100% cut themselves at the knees.
Yeah, it's really hard to value self, and I think it's a journey. I'm still in the process of valuing myself, and each year that goes by I feel like I grow that bit more, but it's going to be a forever journey of trying to put yourself first and understand your worth. And I think it's so important for people in this industry to start realizing that I think people think brands are doing them a favor, but you're doing them a favor.
Yeah, that's
the difference. So you just gotta value what you do and understand that it's worthy of success. And
that's so amazing. So how did you pick the first brand that you wanted to work with, and how were you able to then create a pitch for yourself to say, this is what I'm going to do for you, this is what my service all entails, and I'm worth it?
So I was already getting reached out to by brands. I had been for a while, quite often they'd instantly pitch it. They'd go, here's a gifting deal, blah, blah, blah. And I would usually just go, okay, sure. And it was only until I actually challenged that and was like, okay, here's my rates, or, here's my pitch, here's some stats, and here's what I can do for you. And what's your budget? It's as simple as asking the question, and they're not always going to say yes. They're not always going to say, here you go, here's a paid deal, but you do have to ask, and you have to put yourself in a position to make them understand your worth, because they're very clever with wording it to be like, here's a free piece of clothing. And you think, oh, free? Okay. But it's not free. It's not free because they're getting something back for it. They're getting a piece of content that often makes them sales, and you're technically an advertiser. So it's important to value that.
That's so cool. So how were you able to then, like, sorry, was there a certain amount of followers that you had when they were reaching out?
So at this point, and it's actually interesting because I remember at this time, I've always been quite open on my Instagram, and I talk about it on stories quite a lot, and I get questions. And I did a question box once, and I said, oh, have you had a paid deal? And there was, did a poll and everything. And then I asked, okay, between what followings did you have? And I had a few messages of people saying, oh, I had my first deal at 1,000 followers. And then, others aren't saying, oh, I still haven't been paid at 30K. So it doesn't make sense. But it's just about how you pitch yourself, and obviously the content you produce is important. But at this point for me, it was just before I'd hit 10K. I think I hit 10K in the February of that year. So it was around the mark. But in my head, I'd always thought, when you get to that point of X amount of followers, then brands will value you. But it was actually just a switch of how I approached it, really.
Yeah. You have to value yourself first before others can see value within you.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Sure. That's crazy. So what were the biggest feelings of doubt that you faced, and how did you overcome them? Because what you're doing isn't easy. You're constantly putting yourself out there. You're constantly having to try to come up with ideas and solutions and different brand awareness. So what are some of those biggest feelings of doubt, and how do you get over them?
So when I actually transitioned into doing it full time, this was in June, and I did it at the same time I moved out for the first time. So it was probably a really bad idea. because everything was a bit like up in the air, stressful, but it was exciting, but also like, what am I doing? And I remember the first 2 weeks of doing this full time and I'd stopped my design clients, and I was like transitioning into the fashion Instagram. I was saying no to new clients. I was just wrapping up projects and saying no. I made that transition, and the first 2 weeks to a month, I literally was like, what am I doing? I've made a mistake. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to run my daily life. I don't know how do I structure my days? Where's the future gonna be? And all those imposter syndrome feelings. So obviously you still naturally struggle with doubt day to day. You kind of just have to ignore it. I know that sounds so silly, but you do have to just put it in the back of your brain and say, hold on a second, you're doing good, you got this, just keep going. And I think the feelings of doubt obviously come in with, can I do this? Is this possible? Am I worthy of this? You compare yourself to other people. You think, oh, well, I'm not as good as them, or I'm not as talented as them, or their content's better than mine. But you kind of just have to put that part of your brain aside. You just have to ignore those thoughts, because they're only ever going to keep you in one position and keep you like stationary. But at the end of the day, I want to grow, and lots of people want to grow, but the only way you can grow is ignoring those little mind gremlins that are trying to bring you down. So it's not easy, and I'm not saying it's as simple as that, but it takes a lot of support from loved ones if you have them around, so you can talk to them about these doubts and they can calm you down. And being honest about it. I try not to put on like a facade on Instagram, like I do say when I'm struggling with things. And it's really nice, because actually lots of people message me going, do you know what, I feel exactly the same, like, thank you for speaking about this, because we're all in this together and we're probably all thinking the same thing. Even if you're at 5k, 10k, 100k, 200k, like probably everyone has got the same feelings. So yeah, you kind of just have to just go for it. If you can. Obviously not everyone can.
No, for sure. But if I may summarize what you said, one of the biggest takeaways that I heard you say is that when you're having those thoughts, the first thing that you do is not just you said put them to the back of your head, but you also did something that was really important. You replaced the thoughts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
true.
So
as soon as those thoughts were coming into you, you were taking them, putting them aside, and then replacing them, and then you did something that was really awesome. You started acting. You started with creating some action in order to move yourself forward.
100%.
That is the most important part of our conversation so far. Is like, holy moly, not only were you able to deal with the thoughts, the feelings, but then you replaced those thoughts and you started with action. And as soon as you started to do action, you started to move forward, and that action started to overcome the doubt.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like exactly what you're saying, one of my favorite mottos is start now, get perfect later. And I think it's just so important, because so many people are stunted by their own perfectionism, or like you feel like everything has to be perfect before you even start. But the thing is, nothing's going to be perfect, so you're just going to only end up hindering yourself. I look back at my old content and like I could gag at how gross something is. But it doesn't matter, because it's got me to where I am now. And I'm sure in 2 years' time, maybe not as strongly, but I might feel similar to my content now. And the thing is, it's growth, and you have to just go for it. And if you don't, And if you let other people's opinions stop you as well, I get quite a few messages, people saying like, oh, I want to do it, but I'm scared of what my friends will think or my family will think. And it's like, well, if they're supportive and if they're true people in your life that are important, they will just support you. And even if they make a few, I've had times in the past where it's like, oh, I've seen that video, I saw that, and and often they were actually really supportive. And my true friends and people around me are very, very supportive and like such amazing people. They're always watching what I'm doing. It's like, I really appreciate all my friends and family for that. But yeah, just having that support bubble is important, and just ignoring, if there is anyone that's negative in your life that's like, why are you doing that? Then just either, if you can, cut them out, or if, you just got to do it for yourself, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings in my next question is, because you're putting yourself out there all the time, and how do you deal with the negative comments? Do you read them? Do you just like not go there at all? What is your process for self-preservation?
So negative comments, unfortunately, as you grow, they come more and more. And I wish we lived in a world that didn't exist, but unfortunately it does. And unfortunately, you're always going to get those people that are jealous and sour for no reason. You're always going to get them, and it sucks. That is part of the job. For me, I have mostly had such amazing feedback, and I have so many amazing people that comment lovely things and message me lovely things. But yeah, I have had my share of hate online, as you do. And it usually happens when videos get pushed to a bigger audience and all these new people come flooding in that have something to say. For me, before I got any hate and before I started doing this properly as a job, I was really, really worried about the hate, because I'm a very sensitive person. And I was like, am I going to be able to hack this? Am I going to be able to cope with this? And you kind of don't know until you experience it. But I think I've got myself in a place now where I'm confident enough in myself that it doesn't knock me down. And I'd be lying if it doesn't sometimes hit you and go, hold on, like, ouch, like, why do you feel the need to say that? But actually, most of the time these days, I'll get a comment. I had one today. It was just like ridiculous, like something about my appearance. And it's just like, who are you? You haven't got a profile picture. I couldn't care less what you think. So bye. Like, I kind of just laugh it off now. But obviously I can imagine as hate gets more serious and more hurtful, I can imagine for a lot of people, it's so damaging. It really can be. But there was one situation for me that was the hardest, where a brand posted me on their Facebook page and unfortunately didn't monitor the comments at all. And I was not in control of this post because obviously it was on their page. And I had a flood of comments from all these people, hundreds of comments, saying something about my appearance and being really, really, really nasty. And that was the only time that it was my first flood of like hate. And I remember being like, oh my God, this many people are saying similar things and are being truly nasty. And it was like, how can you say this when you go on their page and they got kids on their page and they're like, parents, and it's just like, what? But I remember the next day, my partner, who is very supportive, he'd been up for an hour reporting every comment he saw. He contacted the brand director on LinkedIn and was like, can you sort this out, please? They sorted it out in the end. I had a little moment. I cried a little minute. And then the rest of the day, had a really nice day. I was like, do you know what? I couldn't care less anymore. I've got it out of my system. I was like, you people don't matter to me. All I care about is my lovely followers, my lovely people who comment lovely things, and my friends and family and loved ones. I couldn't care less what you think. So they're just jealous at the end of the day.
What an incredible partner, though, to take the time to make sure he reports everything that he saw, and then be able to reach out to the brand ambassador and take care of it. Hey, listen, that's a gentleman. Like, that's chivalry.
Really, I'm very lucky.
to the extreme. Like, wow, how incredible to have that kind of support system. Congratulations. but you know what? It's not just that. Like, it takes a certain human being at a certain level of understanding of self to attract a person like that.
Yeah. Oh.
Right. So good on you too. Right. You can't have one without the other. Normally we bring in people into our lives that are around the same level of where we are. So if we're hurt and we want to make other people's hurt around us, then we bring in that kind of people in our lives. But for you, you've been daring, you've been courageous, you've been curious, you've tried new things, you've leaped and you failed, and you've leaped and you're like scared, and you're doing it, and that's really really amazing.
It was a crazy one.
But with that being said, do you mind if I ask, what were some of the mistakes that you've made while learning how to monetize, and what was the biggest lesson that you learned?
So with monetizing, also, sorry, one last comment about that, just because we're on the roll of the hate comments. My one tip would be, do not reply to it, and don't read into it, don't listen to them. Like, don't sit there and scroll. If you've got floods of comments that are just nasty, just don't read them. That's the best thing I could say. I actually didn't read the majority of those comments because I saw enough and I didn't need to see any more. And I think it would have only upset me more. And I think there's a real temptation to respond to it and be like, oh my God, like, defend yourself. Yeah. But that's what they want at the end of the day. It's really hard sometimes. You really like so hard not to reply. But when you don't respond to them, they just end up like not getting what they want, and they don't deserve that attention. So anyway, sorry, that was just
that's
my really, final piece of that
really bit. Great comment. That's an amazing way to approach the problem, because Joe Rogan, that's the same thing. He won't even look at any comments. No point. He no matter if they're good or bad, he just doesn't read them. You don't need it takes away from his own mental health, his own mental space, the way that he feels. It's like, I'm not going to do it. Doesn't read him, and then just moves forward.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
great piece of advice. Important.
But so with monetization, I'd say my biggest mistake was definitely, as I was saying earlier, not charging soon enough. Not taking myself or Instagram seriously enough to actually pitch myself and to actually value it, to be like, actually, we can do this deal. That'd be amazing on a paid basis.
Sorry to interrupt, but how do you pitch yourself to a company that you want to work with? How do you get in contact with the right people? How do you even wrap your head around doing that?
So it takes time, and it's kind of a persistence game. I think I've had a few people message me before about this, and they're like, oh, no one replies to me. And you might email 50, you might email 100 brands, and you might get 5 responses or less. But that is just the case. They've constantly got people coming into their emails and inboxes, and sometimes they're just not looking for, they might not have the budget at that time, they might not be looking for a new campaign, they might be preparing for the next season's campaigns. You can't take it personally, is my point, because so many people could then get put off, like, oh, no one's replied to me, that's a rejection. No, it's not. It just might not be the right time. And so keep trying. Yeah, I think I was fortunate enough throughout my whole journey so far to be reached out to quite regularly. So it's a matter of like going back and forth once they've contacted me, negotiating a deal. But I'd also would do brand outreach, and it just takes time. You just have to build some form of database and try and find the right contact. It might be a case of DMing them on Instagram and saying, hey, I'd love to work with you. Like, here's why, very short and sweet. Here's my email, or can I take an email to speak further about this? Just keeping it short, sweet, professional. And then if you're pitching yourself on your emails, I'd say think of it as a business again. So pitch yourself with stats, tell them what content you want to create with them and why, and just value yourself, you know, say, here's why we should work together. Here's why it'd be perfect to create content for you. And quite often they'll be like, oh, okay, actually, if you've got great stats, if you can say, I've reached this many people this month, say it. Like, don't hold back and don't devalue what you do. So, yeah, and it's as simple as that, really. And, you know, sometimes you might just never get a response, or until you probably, you know, further down the line, they might end up contacting you. But you just got to keep going, keep reaching out to brands you'd like to work with and building that relationship with them, really. Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Like the enormous steps that you had to take in order to get to where you are today, to be able to monetize, to be able to then make a living, to then be able to then create content. This is the thing that I get really curious about, is how do you go about, or what is the process of your content creation, and what are the hurdles that you have to overcome when you kind of reach a block?
Yeah, that happens a lot. So my process is, I think it's like, what people don't speak about is actually, it's more about organizing yourself and preparing, like having everything organized, having spreadsheets of what brands you're working with, like organizing what content you want to create, brainstorming ideas, thinking of new ideas. You know, I think a lot of people don't talk about that because it kind of looks like you just pick up the phone and take a photo of your cute outfit that day. But the process behind that for most people is actually, you've got to sit there, you've got to plan it, you've got to plan the location, you've got to plan what you're doing, where you're going, who you're shooting with, what content series you might want to do next. And it's a whole process.
Well, for
and
sure.
I think it looks very easy and easy breezy, just, oh, I'm just going for coffee and I'm taking a photo, when the reality is quite different. My personal process of shooting and stuff is a case of doing everything in batch, because that is what's the most efficient. And at this point, that's what I'm doing at the minute. I'll take a suitcase of 5 to 6 outfits, and I'll shoot it all in one day with my friend who's also doing the same. And we'll plan all the locations, we'll plan all the poses and photos we want to do, and we'll do it all in one day. And it's quite unglamorous when you actually see the behind the scenes. It's getting changed in cafe toilets and things like that. It is quite unglamorous, and a lot of content creators do the same thing. And a lot of traveling, and I love it, but it's a process.
For sure. So I love the fact that you do it with a friend. How do you guys interweave your posts so that they don't get mundane? quote unquote mundane.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like you said, with the creative block, it happens. I think every creative person or anyone in a business or working for yourself, you have moments, or even not working for yourself, working with someone else, you have moments, you have months, weeks, days where you're just like, what? Like nothing is coming to my head. I can't be bothered. I even when you're doing your most ideal dream job, like I would say this is my dream job and it's turning into everything I've wanted. But there is still plenty of times where I'm like, no motivation, feeling negative for no reason. That it's just natural, it's just human. Everyone's going to feel it and you can't feel guilty for that. You obviously have to try and remind yourself why you're grateful and happy to be here. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We're always going to feel those feelings of, I can't be bothered today.
Yeah.
And when you hit those creative blocks or moments of, I don't feel like doing this, you just have to be honest with yourself and truthful with yourself and kind to yourself as well, because I think quite often I'm harsh to myself and think, no, get up and do it. Just stop messing around. Sometimes that's a good way to deal with it, but quite often you just need to hear what you're saying to yourself, listen to what you truly need that day. And if it's not a day to be creative and create loads of content and do this, that, and the other, then do something else. Do something for you. Practice I'm quite into my journaling and manifestations and affirmations. So, sit down, journal it out, think about why you're feeling these things and just give yourself a break. Really.
That's amazing. Now a word from our title sponsor. Online shopping is always a daunting task, and even though you have spent hours researching and reading reviews, you never really know if what you bought will actually fit. Let us take the headache out of online shopping. Perfit is building a solution that helps people find perfect fitting clothing online, no matter your body shape and size. Our technology creates the most realistic representation of the shopper and the garment in the digital world, but we are just getting started. Our dream needs your contribution in order for it to come true. Our goal is to raise $1 million, so your donation will allow us to continue to innovate and hire incredible talent. Visit perfit.digital for more information and to donate. Thank you in advance. And now, back to our regular programming. Absolutely amazing. One of the biggest themes that I'm getting from our conversation is, first of all, there's a lot of self-awareness. But secondly, it's learning how to love yourself and value yourself enough that you do things that will benefit you, not because you have to, but because you actually love yourself enough to do them.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a journey. I didn't wake up one day and just suddenly start doing all these things. It's a process, and you have moments of, do you know what, I need to get back on that self-love journey or self-awareness journey. But it's a journey for a reason,
Yeah. How did you get started with the self-awareness and self-love journey? What got the ball rolling?
It started actually when I was back in my photography job. I remember I stumbled across a few podcasts about law of attraction and manifestation, and I dove into it all, and I was like, oh my God, whoa, what is this world? What is this positive mindset? And this way of thinking? And it really intrigued me. And I kind of got a bit obsessed with it and really into learning about it and learning about mindset and ways to change mindsets. And that is probably partly the reason I'm here doing what I'm doing now, is because of that journey. And like I said, it is always a journey of picking myself up and going, actually, you need to realign yourself, bring yourself back to what's important, and learn more about it, because it is really important. And the more I listen and look at successful people and people I aspire to, they're like, oh yeah, I love law of attraction, manifestation,
Yeah.
self-love. It's like, there's a theme here.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to be, on this self-love journey to get to where you want to get, really. So yeah, it's been a couple years of just learning, and yeah,
learning and action. Knowledge knowledge without action is useless. And one of the cool things that you do is that you're constantly acting. You're acting on your thoughts, you're acting on your feelings, you're acting. And then when it starts to get too much, you're like, okay, let's put that out there. And now let's act inwardly. Let's start writing, let's start journaling, let's start meditation, let's start projecting what surrendering, and then projecting what the future has. Like 100%. Absolutely amazing.
And surround yourself with people that bring that positivity in your life as well. If you can, toxic people that aren't helping you on your journey and supporting you, you don't need that in your life. You just need the people around you that you can support and be inspired by, and feel positivity when you see them and think about them. That's the people you need around you. That is really important as well.
Yeah.
Because I think we can all get caught up with those relationships and friendships that you feel like you have to stick with because you've been friends with them for years or something. But if they're not bringing the positivity in your life that you need to grow, then it's not right. And that's just the brutal truth of it.
It is. But it's the truth that I think a lot of us need to hear and then follow through on, because we keep relationships around us just because they've always been there.
Yeah.
And we don't take note with how toxic a person can actually be. And when we don't take note of that, then we literally start placing roadblocks within our own world in order to move forward. And that makes things really, really difficult. So I've loved this conversation, and I have a few more questions. Now that you've come so far, what's next for you? Where do you see yourself in the next, year or 5? What's on the horizon for you, Summer?
I always struggle with this question, and I love setting myself goals, and I love thinking into the future, but it is also quite a scary question. I think
big time,
because so much can happen in such a short amount of time. You almost underestimate what can change. But I am very much a goal setter. I like to write my New Year goals. I like to set myself goals I can hit each year, and I know long term what I want in my life. So I guess I do know. I hate admitting it because it's scary. But right now I am working super hard on just getting as much content out as possible. I've been at my wit's end, just going. I'm waiting till Christmas to have a good break, and then I'm going to start again in January as well. And I'm just right this second, and it's been paying off finally. Things are really looking good, and it's such a relief because I've just been at it every day, grinding, and I love it. But the next year I'd love to continue this journey of just creating content, getting better with my content, producing things that people want to see, that inspire people. I want to build more of a connection with my followers. I want to challenge myself and challenge my platform, think outside the box, not just conform to what everyone's doing, and just keep grinding and doing things that I love and going to events and meeting new people. And yeah, I've got a management now as well, so that's great because I've got help with you know, brand deals and things like that. And I know I've spoken a lot about brand deals, and I just want people to know that brand deals are important, but in this industry, but also just the content is the most important, because everything will come if you're focusing down on the content you're creating, the quality of what you're doing, and whether you truly love it, because it's also quite transparent. You realize, I've done it before where I've been making stuff that isn't true to myself and isn't what I truly love doing or isn't natural to me, and it's been obvious because it just hasn't gone anywhere. It didn't do well. It was clear that it wasn't my true self. So I think sticking to what's true to me is what's always helped me grow, and that's what I want to continue doing. But yeah, in the next year I'd love to go to fashion weeks and travel more, and maybe delve into other platforms as well, like YouTube. That's kind of a long-term goal. And 5 years, I mean, I'd love to be a homeowner. I'd love to continue just growing my platform, traveling, have a clothing line or 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have my own brand or business as well. So yeah, there's lots that I'd love to do.
Wow. Absolutely
yeah.
amazing. No, I love that you have a desire to grow and become as big as you possibly can without having a closed-minded approach of this is what it has to be. And that's one of my mentors. That's one of the things that he's been teaching me lately. He's been absolutely magnificent and fantastic, and just helping me get to the point where even in my speech, I don't close off the potential of what could be just because I want something to be a certain way. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think it's absolutely amazing. And I'm so happy that you are achieving all of the goals that you want and learning throughout those goals. So then one of my last questions is, if you could give advice to your followers, to your listeners, what would that 1 or 2 pieces of advice be?
That's a good question. I think my piece of advice would be to don't give up. That is probably top, because there has been countless times that I've almost given up. And don't try as much as you can, and sometimes it's impossible to not do it, but it's about bringing yourself back, about like what you said about changing your mindset, having these thoughts and changing it. So try not to compare yourself, because that is what's the saying, comparison's the thief of joy. And it's so true, because we all do it in this industry as well. It's so hard not to. I'm a sucker for comparing myself in terms of success, and it is just pointless, because you don't know their story. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know why they've got there when they have. There's all these factors you're not seeing, and it is pointless to compare your journey because you're on your own path. And I know that is almost a really frustrating saying, but it's so true. Everyone's on their own path, and it will happen at the right time. And I always have to remind myself this at moments where it's not doing as well as I'd like. Sometimes things aren't in your control as well. You know, if you're doing everything you can to produce the best content that you want to make and to be the person you want to be, that's all you can do. And the world will reward you eventually if you just keep going. And that's kind of the motto I've had to keep reminding myself of at times where I've struggled. And there has been many times where I almost gave up, but I'm so glad I didn't, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I'd given up. So just keep going and don't give up.
Awesome. And then are you reading any books or listen to any podcasts right now that you want your listeners to follow along with you?
I love podcasts. I am a sucker for a podcast. I love Diary of CEO. It's so motivational. Like, I love all the guests on there. It's just such a variety of people that you can really draw inspiration from each episode for different reasons. And I love that. There's a podcast that's been quite big recently called Nearly Weds as well, which is more of a like funny comedy, like couple that are about to get married, and it's kind of just relatable. But what else? There's a few. I go through phases of listening to different things, but in terms of books, I'm actually reading The Alchemist.
Oh yes, that's a great book.
Which, yeah, I've been meaning to read for a long time, and I'm only a quarter way through, but it's really interesting. It's one of those books that makes you think. And it's about a spiritual journey of a shepherd and his sheep, and it's a classic, isn't it?
It is.
So it is actually really like my thought-provoking book. So so far, I would recommend.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I have enjoyed our conversation. This has been an absolute treat. Please send all of your contact info, and I'll make sure that it's up underneath our podcast. Make sure that will have your everywhere that they can find you on social media. Make sure that everybody can find you anywhere. And I'm so excited for this. Thank you so much. It's been magnificent.
It's been amazing. I've really enjoyed it. It's been
perfect.
Really good.